Okie dokie. I have been putting this off and putting this off. Because I don't like working on this series of saw. But somebody's got to do it. And that's all there is to it. All right. Ugh. I'm all oily. That's why I didn't want to unhook that oil pump. Ugh. Ah. Okay. So let's get to it. The stock 029 cylinder we are going to be replacing with this aftermarket 039 or 390 cylinder. This is a 290 cylinder. Same thing. Same thing. All right, and I have decided to actually run the regular piston that came with this kit. The reason being is I know that I'm going to open it back up again. So might as well run this piston, then we open it back up again, and we put in a high compression piston, blah, blah, blah. All kinds of stuff. It's over and over and over again. We're going to be in and out of this. So. There we go. All right. Got to remove the old piston. I say old, this is a brand new setup. It is. I got to get that out of there. For those of you guys out there that don't like videos like this, I'm sorry. For those of you guys out there who do like videos like this, you're welcome. I'm a weirdo. This sucks that I'm having to do this to get this wrist pin out of here. Because it just tells me, well, I'm going to have a hard time. Bam. All right. Now, this one comes with a new wrist pin, so I'm going to use it. Hopefully it won't be such a problem to get it in and out of the piston. All right, whenever you're installing a piston, look for the little arrow that's on the top of it. That goes out the exhaust, right? So when you look at your crankshaft, you see this side right here is much longer. This side is tapered. The tapered side is your flywheel. The longer side, that's your clutch. So clutch, flywheel, exhaust is straight ahead. We're pointing out the exhaust. Good to go, bro. Oh, this one slides in and out. Easy. I like that. Got the new Circlips. Dang it. Be careful, don't do that. because they're hard to find when you drop them. There we go, I found it. Bing. All right, now these, I should point out very specifically. No, I'll show you. See how it looks like a G? That G portion, or the little line right there, we want to nip that off. We want to make it as short as we can. So, much better. Why do we do that? Well, pretty plain and simple. All that extra wire out there that's sticking out is weight. And we want to cut down on that weight. In this situation, it's not because it's not a performance thing, it's a longevity thing. Sounded like somebody just came in my door. Probably just the wind, though. So anyways, yeah, it's a longevity thing. These types of circlips are known. That tip that hangs out there, well, you're moving at 10,000 plus RPMs, like a lot, and so it vibrates and it goes all the way up, all the way down, boom, 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 boom. And so especially if that tip sticking out is horizontal, then it's literally going like this. And eventually it just breaks. And then whenever it breaks, it gets hung up in your cylinder. It causes extreme failure. So by nipping it off real nice and short, you are minimizing the chances of that happening. And the other thing that you do is, instead of installing it to where that tip is horizontal, install it to where that tip is vertical. You'll get a lot less forces on that tip wanting to bend it over and over and over and over. All right, so now that it's in place, I rotate it. I like to put that tip at the 6 o'clock position, all right, facing straight up towards high noon. That's just, it would be, I think, probably the same results if you were to put it at noon pointing down to 6 p.m. I just like to go to 6. There we go. All right. Now, the crank seals. Should you reuse them? You know, in a lot of cases, you might be able to get away with it with these clamshells, you know, because you can take them on and off easily. But I wouldn't trust them, right? And those right there, like the one that was on the clutch side was quite honestly pretty loose. So I wouldn't, I'm not going to trust them. I'm not. The bearings, however, are fine. And since I know that I'm going to have this thing open and closed, I've got a whole bunch of cheap Chinese crank seals. At least they're still cheap right now. Who knows what the future holds? Not me. All right, whenever I'm putting these things on, I like to take a little bit of 2-stroke oil, I just got some cheap stuff sitting right here that came with that Portland chainsaw. Anything will work, any oil. But, you know, you've got direct moving parts touching each other. And so I like to make sure that they're lubed up. That's all. So I'll just put it on the shaft itself on both sides. Normally I put it on the crank seal itself. However, in this situation, we're about to put it all together and we're going to use a sealant on those seals, so I don't want them to have oil on them. All right. Be very careful getting it over that lip on the clutch side. The flywheel side's not an issue. Boop, goes right on there. See, those are tight. The old ones were not tight at all. But it didn't have an air leak. I would have noticed that. All right, now as far as the rings go, I am going to use the rings on this Duke piston. Why is that? Because I feel like the Duke has better rings. All right, then, I mean, this cylinder setup, I literally paid $23 for the whole kit and caboodle. So I can't expect it to be really good quality. The Duke stuff, on the other hand, I find is quite good quality. So their stuff has never let me down. Whenever you're putting these rings on, you have little pins in each one of your ring landings or whatever. See that little pin in there? Whenever you're putting that on, see those cutouts? The pin will go in that cutout. So if you push this together, you imagine right there, that's where that pin goes. So we see the pin is at the top. So that cutout will have the pin at the top. If you put it in like this, you'll be upside down. And we literally just open these up with our fingernails. I have a tool that stretches these out, but on these small pistons, I gotta say, honestly, I don't trust it. I do it just like that every time. That's the way I do it. Now, but anyways, the Duke's rings, the reason I'm using them is not so much that I consider them of higher quality. I do. But in this case, it's just simply, I'm not going to run this for much time at all. So I'll take these rings, use them on this piston, and then whenever I tear it apart and put the Duke's piston back in, well, the rings will already have a little bit of wear in them, so they'll have begun to break in. That's all it is. I'm just looking to minimize my break-in time. All right. Now, set that right there. That thing keeps leaking oil. God, I should just drain the oil out of it. Because now, I've got this sitting down. Boop. It could have some oil residue on it. So I want to make sure and clean that up properly. I also need to clean up a little bit better on this, which is the bottom half. So let me grab Saucy. All right, we just got a little bit of carb cleaner and we got some gray Scotch Brite. And what I'm doing is I'm literally trying to remove the moto seal that was used on here previously. And it's coming right off. Now, I'll still be down in that groove a little bit, but that's okay. Try and get it out as much as you can. All right. Nice clean surface, because I'm not using Moto Seal and I'm going to use a different product and I don't want them to mix. Now, go ahead and do the same thing. Oh no, that's the old cylinder. There's the new cylinder. I'm going to go ahead and just clean up a little bit on it. Now I'm noticing I'm getting all kinds of dust and debris and everything down in my cylinder. You want to do this around the base, around all the areas that you want to seal up, as well as inside. You want to just clean it up. Now don't face that down and put it on your oily table. You've just cleaned it. There's no residue on there now. We're nice and cleaned up. So now we take a clean paper towel, dry it up a little bit. What works great in a situation like this is compressed air. So let's get some. Compressed air will dry that out immediately. Whoa. I'm trying to move fast here if you guys haven't figured it out. I was expecting that to pop up in the air. A little disappointed with that. Compressed air. All right, now, what am I actually going to use to put this thing together? Well, I told you I'm going to be breaking it down over and over again. Blue Hylamar, baby. The reason for this stuff is it doesn't dry. Not really. I mean, it dries to a point, I suppose. But for the most part, yes, you don't dry. So, go ahead and let's go ahead and get the piston in before we apply the blue Hylamar. Ooh. All right. So now I did not put any oil on this piston. This is dry as a bone. Everything's dry. Remember, the arrow goes out the exhaust. Make sure that your grooves, your openings for your pins and with the rings are all lined up. With this, we might be able to just simply shove it right up in there. Nope. Not wanting to just go up in there naturally. So, how do we make this happen? Well, I'm not going to be able to show you this, but you got to be able to push those rings in somehow, some way. Typically, a screwdriver is employed here, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, but there's no way I can show you this. It's just no way. There we go. I think it's going. Boy, this is bad. Wow, this is the worst setup I've ever seen. There we go. Finally got it to happen. All right. Be careful when doing that. That is problematic. All right, blue Halimar. Let's squirt a little bit out first to make sure we got good consistency with the product. And the question that most people have is, do you put your RTV or sealant, whatever you got, on the pockets for the seals? Well, I do. Shouldn't be necessary because your crank seals are encased with rubber on these models. But I do it. All right. And I just pat it up. The great thing about this Halimar stuff is any excess that goes into the cylinder, while we try and not have any, sure, we do try, but we fail. We always fail, right? But any excess that we do have, it's just going to get flushed out over the course of the running cycle. Not that the same thing cannot be said of other stuff like Motosil and Durco. It won't always get washed out. You'll have residual left behind. And the reason that's a big deal is because it interrupts your flow. Now your crank seals do have a specific spot that they line up with and go into that pocket. So there's a little lip make sure they go in there right. And that's good. All right. I think the theory with this Hylamar is that it does in fact dry, but only whenever oxygen hits it, or the other way around, something like that. Basically on this side, really all we need is Hylamar on the crank seal pockets, but well, obviously I'm going to town. I will go ahead and add that this stuff I don't think is the best stuff to use on a clamshell saw. I don't think it's very good to use on a clamshell because clamshells are not perfectly secure. Well, nothing is really, but they're not as secure as a regular setup on a pro saw. Meaning that especially if you are building considerable amounts of power, it'll flex. And this stuff doesn't really dry, not really. And whenever it flexes, it can cause a problem. Now, in the teardown of this, I missed that bolt. That bolt right there is actually the lug nut, the rear bar nut stud, the rear bar stud right there, screws into that. So I need to make sure that this is on the exhaust side. And the exhaust, I'm looking at it, so this should be right next to me. There we go. Are you kidding me? Get in there, you freak. There we go. There you go. All you got to do is talk dirty to it. That'll work. There it is. Got all four of them. Thank goodness. All right. Boy, this thing's a pain in the ass to work on. I would have had everything all put back together and buttoned up if it was a different saw. I mean, seriously. I'm not liking the way that feels. Is this normal? Doesn't feel. Feels kind of like they're all cross-threading. That's the way it is. Yep, we're good. All right, moving on. Now, first thing, let's put that oiler back in place so that we can stop it from leaking oil. All right, yay. The oiler, take these little screws. We'll set it on 2 for these guys. Moving right along, ain't we? This right here is that bar stud that I was talking about. That's actually screwing into the base of the cylinder. I think a lot of people would call that the saddle on these. Now, in order to get it off, we have to put a wrench on that bottom nut because the I got two nuts and they're squishing against each other. Whoop. Slow down, muchacho. Come on, get off of there. This one's just being annoying for no good reason. All right. Might as well go ahead and clutch it up while we're here. And on this side, remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty is backwards. We want to go lefty tighty. I guess I got it. Now we're moving. Let's wipe off some of that excess Hylamar. Just because. All right, we're loosening up the coil. Aha, there's my bolt. The grounding wire for the coil and the switch and stuff screws into the side of the cylinder here on this guy. And so I guess they're self-threading screws into that aluminum. You just hammer away at it. All right, and I don't want to do this because I don't want to give you guys I don't want to give away any secrets just yet. But if you're watching this and you see what I'm about to do, this is probably going to give you a hint of what's to come in the future. Very roughly 13 inches in circumference. 13 inches. All right, so we go ahead and we put this guy right back on. Bada bing, bada boom. Oh, turn it on 3. There we go, should be good. Now the coil. If you don't have one of these fancy things, which is used to set the gap between the flywheel and the coil, it's fine. Use a business card. Just a regular standard business card, you'll be fine. But you put that in between the flywheel and the coil, and then while it's in place, you tighten down. Uh-oh. Oh, shit. That's why that was a little bit loose. Fudge. That is stripped out. Plastic case saws. I love them. I love them so much. That's a lie. I don't love them. I'm not serious with that. I'm not serious with it. So in the teardown video, I noticed that the flywheel was slightly rubbing the coil. That's why. This top bolt right there is ever so slightly stripped out. So how to fix it? Well, we've got to either get a different bolt that will cut its own threads, or we got to fill that up with something. Nothing's really going to work. Anything that I do is just not going to work very good. Like I can put a toothpick in there and then ram it home. The best way to do it is to get a slightly larger screw that is going to just make its own threads in that plastic. But this is why plastic saws suck. I mean, I could probably try and put a helicoil in there. Might work. But hell, since the move up here, I don't have my helicoils. For right now, I'm going to pretend it ain't happening, and I will fix that at a later date. And by a later date, I mean before I run this thing. But I'm going to keep going, putting it back together. Keep going. Oh shit, it's already... Damn, this thing takes a long time to work on. I gotta go put the fish in the oven. What a piece of shit. Yeah, I have to stop for now. I do. And I will figure that out later. Shit.